Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is the next big Dragon Ball game coming out in early 2020, and I thought that now would be a good time to go back and look at some of the classic games from the SNES Super Famicom era of Dragon Ball, the earliest Dragon Ball games that I played when I was younger. I covered the Super Butoden series way back about 4 years ago, but that was before I got a whole bunch of new subscribers, so let's go back and revisit those 3 videos again, except this time they're all going to be put together into one video covering Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 1, 2, and 3, a history lesson on the early DBZ games, some of my favorite childhood memories revisited.
Battle デュアルスクリーン搭載アクションバトルスーパーファミコンドラゴンボール Z スーパーブトーデン
Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden was released March 20th, 1993, while the fight between Goku and Cell was going on in the TV version in episode 179, literally a day before Goku hit Cell with the Warp Kamehameha. And really the promotion of this game was Dragon Ball Z building towards the Cell game, building towards Goku vs. Cell. Every one of the Super Butoden games has pros and cons, and at the end of the day, it's far from a perfect series. With this Super Butoden title, the strengths are that it has the largest character roster in the series and the longest story mode of any of the first 3 Butodens. In fact, the story mode actually begins with the fight between Goku and Piccolo from the tournament at the end of Dragon Ball and ends with, as I said, Goku vs. Cell in the Cell game. The inflated character roster in this game is impressive, as you can play as base form Goku and Vegeta, Piccolo, Frieza in his 100% power final form, 18, 16, 20, and first form Cell. If you put in a code, you can unlock future Trunks in his SSJ Grade 3 form, Gohan in his full power SSJ form, Super Saiyan versions of both Goku and Vegeta, as well as Perfect Cell, the game's final boss. This is a fantastic character roster for its time and the most diverse of the first trilogy, 13 characters in total, many of which would not come back for the sequels, including base forms of Goku and Vegeta. With these characters though, you can relive many of the classic battles of the series. My personal favorite character to play as is 16 because he has an amazing badass spin kick technique and I love his Hell's Flash. Other than the story mode, the game comes with a traditional versus mode where you can fight the computer or a second player, and a Tenkaichi Budokai mode where you take 8 characters and compete in a custom tournament. The fighting mechanics of this game set the bar for future Dragon Ball Z games with a fighting engine unique to the series. Naturally, all fighting games have punch and kick buttons, but how many have power up, fly, and key attack buttons? The stages in the game are much bigger than most fighting games, and if you go back far enough, the screen will split. You can power up your character's key, labeled as power, and then perform gigantic signature key attacks like the Kamehameha or Frieza's awesome energy cutter, even though they aren't purple. That's okay. In this game, you press down to power up, and you can only do it while flying, which was fixed in later versions. Think about this next time you play a modern DBZ game. This was the first fighting game in all of DBZ. Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden sold 1.45 million copies in Japan and still remains the best-selling Dragon Ball video game in Japan to date. The truth is, Super Butoden has not aged well, especially when compared to the modern games like the Budokai series, Burst Limit, and of course Dragon Ball Xenoverse. For its time though, it was all we had. And for its time, its roster and story mode carried the game, but the controls themselves are very clunky and unimpressive, and this would of course be fixed in the sequels. However, none of the Butoden sequels had this kind of story mode that covered literally half of Dragon Ball Z, and to me that's a huge pro. In my opinion, as a fan of the series, it's worth at least a playthrough. With Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden being a massive financial success, it would only be a matter of time before a sequel was made. And the Japanese didn't even have to wait a year. Let's talk Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 2.
バトルアクションファイナルタイプスーパーファミコンドラゴンボール Z スーパーブトーデン2発動
おめえの出番だご飯
Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 2 was released 8 months after the first game on December 17th, 1993, during the time when the series was already in the very early Majin Buu arc. But the game didn't really reflect this. Instead, the game focused on the end of the Cell game as well as the 2 Dragon Ball Z movies that came out around that time, movies 8 and 9. Which are the first Broly movie and the Bojack movie. As a result of this, the roster of Super Butoden 2 is definitely lacking when compared to the first game, and thus we don't see Frieza or the artificial humans return. Instead, this game featured characters like SSJ2 Gohan, SSJ Vegeta, SSJ Future Trunks, Piccolo, Perfect Cell, Cell Jr., Zangya from Movie 9, and of course, Bojack from Movie 9. Wait a minute, where the hell is Goku? Well, because Goku was dead in the series, he's not there. Or is he? If you input a code during the intro to the game, you can unlock Goku, and yes, Broly as well. This is the first video game where Broly is playable, and let me tell you, Broly fans will be happy as hell because this guy's a tank. Still though, this is the only Dragon Ball Z game I can think of where Goku is not playable from the get-go. Super Butoden 2's gameplay is a massive improvement over the first of the series. Although the modes stay the same with the Versus mode, Tournament, and Story modes, the actual fighting gameplay is way smoother and easier than Butoden 1. This time, each character's moves are much easier to execute. You can power up your ki at a much faster rate, this time by holding the Y and B buttons at the same time, and you don't have to fly. And there are new stages that have gorgeous backgrounds, including one where you go underwater. The overall graphics had a huge overhaul, with the ki blast now being twice their size and much more accurate to the epic ki blast in the series, as well as giving you the ability to block or even counter a ki blast and have an epic beam struggle just like in the show. In addition to that, this game also institutes a much more complex combo system where you can hit quote-unquote meteor combos that do lots of damage up close. And you can also pick the same fighter in Versus mode with a palette swap. And what's interesting is that Goku and Vegeta have alternate costumes that kinda look like the Revival of F costumes 2 decades early. But really, the biggest strong point of this game, in my opinion, is the epic story mode. The best of any of the Butodens, and really one of the best in any game even to this day. You choose from Gohan, Trunks, Vegeta, or Piccolo, and begin with the Cell games where Butoden 1 left off. What makes this so awesome is that depending on whether you win or lose, the story continues and takes a different turn, with a number of what-if possibilities. You choose a sparring partner first, and then we see Mr. Satan get smacked. Cell self-destructs, comes back, and we have our big fight. If you can't beat Super Perfect Cell, Gohan will do it for you with the Father-Son Super Kamehameha. Now, once Cell is defeated, you move on to Movie 9, known as Galaxy at the Brink, or for Western audiences, Bojack Unbound. However, the story in the game is actually vastly different than in the movie. In this version, Bojack creates clones of the Z Fighters, and once you defeat them, you fight resurrected Cell Juniors, then Zangya, and then finally Bojack. I did find it very interesting that of all of Bojack's henchmen, Zangya was the only one that made the game. Maybe because they wanted to have a female presence to replace 18 from the last game, but I don't know. Now, if you fight Bojack and lose the fight, Broly will appear and kill him for you. Then you gotta beat Broly. If you play the game on the higher difficulties and you play it with the correct way of playing it, when you make the correct decisions, you get what appears to be kind of a retelling of the second Broly movie, where Broly arrives looking for Goku, but of course, since Goku is dead, he has to fight the Z Fighters. But of course, it's the Cell Saga Z Fighters, so you're not going to get Goten or Trunks. The awesome story mode and the enhanced combat system make this, to me, the absolute best of the original 3 Butodens. Some pre-orders of Extreme Butoden come with a downloadable copy, so I hope everybody will get a chance to enjoy Super Butoden 2 from the Super Famicom, a truly classic Dragon Ball game, probably the first real quality fighting game that was ever put out with the Dragon Ball Z name on it. Check it out, and I'll catch you down the road. Super Butoden 1 was fine, Super Butoden 2 was great, but now let's talk about the last of the original trilogy, Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 3, which is, neither.
勝負だカカロット来いベジータ
Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 3 was released on September 29th, 1994, around the time that Boo and Babidi were terrorizing the Earth after Vegeta sacrificed his life, which is pretty close to being accurate to the time frame of the game. The only slight difference is that Gohan is wearing his early Boo Saga arc clothing rather than the Saiyaman or Kaioshin training garb. The first thing that I must say is that the actual fighting engine of Super Butoden 3 is just as good as its predecessor, and is in fact probably slightly better. The same super powered ki attacks remain, as well as the quick combos from the past, so the fights are still kind of the same, not much of a difference from its predecessor. The graphics are lush, and the backgrounds, although way more generic than the ones from the first 2 games, at least look nice. I think it's pretty lazy to just have random skies with palette swaps of daytime and dusk to fight in as stages, but the game makes up for it by including the Budokai stage as well as a stage inside of Babidi's ship, which is the only stage in any of the 3 games that you cannot fly. So, flying to avoid your opponent and spamming ki blasts will not work in this stage, even though it works in every other stage. Either way, the backgrounds and the stages are still pretty much lacking. However, that's about it when it comes to positives. The reality is, this fucking game sucks. When you have such a great title as Super Butoden 2, which did everything right, they literally did the opposite here. Let's start with the bullshit roster. So, the playable characters are Goku, Adult Gohan, Goten, Kaioshin, Fat Boo, Kid Trunks, Majin Vegeta, 18, and Dabura. If you put in a code during the start of the game, you get to unlock the secret character, Future Trunks. Wait a minute, Future Trunks? Remember Future Trunks, guys? Remember all the epic battles that Future Trunks had in the Boo Saga? You mean to tell me that they included future fucking Trunks and not Piccolo, who was actually in the fucking saga? Who made that decision? I mean, it's cool that you can retell some of the most epic battles from the series, but come on, why the hell's Piccolo not there? 7 characters with blonde hair, including puss-ass Supreme Kai, but no Piccolo? But that's not even the biggest crime that this game commits. The best part about Super Butoden 2 was the story mode, as I outlined in my review for that game. Well, what about the story mode in Super Butoden 3? Is it worse? No, it's not even there. There is no story mode here. The only modes that are in this game are versus against a computer or another player and tournament mode. That's it. And the only way to really beat the game is to win a random tournament and then you get the credits. What the hell? So yeah, this game really sucks and literally has 10 to 15 minutes of replay value at best. Maybe more if you have a friend to play with you, but not by much. The lack of anything remotely close to a story mode with less characters, as well as making key spamming much easier and cheaper by charging up your key 3 times as fast as in Butoden 2, is just a fail. The game just feels half-assed and unfinished, almost as if the game designers were worried about meeting a deadline and just decided to take fights from 2 and make slight changes. Ultimately, even though Dabura and Boo are fun to play as, the game isn't even worth touching more than once or twice, even if you're a hardcore fan. Stick with Butoden 2, and I'll catch you down the road.